Imagine waking up one day and finding another version of yourself standing next to you. A perfect replica, a clone. This clone would look exactly like you and have the same DNA, but there's one big difference. It wouldn't have your memories, experiences, or thoughts that make who you are. It would be a blank slate, even though it would physically be an identical copy of you. Cloning yourself seems like a wild idea, but it's not as impossible as it once was. In fact, the world of cloning took a huge leap forward in 1996 when scientists successfully cloned Dolly the sheep. Dolly's creation was a revolutionary moment, proving that cloning a complex organism from an adult cell was possible. This breakthrough sparked excitement, fear, and a lot of debate, bringing the idea of human cloning closer to reality. Just a few years later, in 2001, scientists successfully cloned human embryos, showing that we had the ability to clone humans, at least on a small scale. However, even though the science is there, no verified human clones exist, or at least none that we know about. Human cloning has intrigued people for decades, but it's also been a source of controversy and ethical debates. Back in the 1930s, J.B.S. Haldane, a British biologist, was one of the first to seriously introduce the idea of human cloning. He even phrased the terms clone and cloning. Haldane's vision was ahead of its time, but even today, almost a century later, the thought of cloning humans brings up more questions than answers. One of the biggest challenges with human cloning is the ethical issues it poses. If you cloned yourself, who would that clone be? Would they have the same rights and freedoms as you? Would they be treated as an individual, or as just a copy or a scientific experiment? These are deep, complicated questions, and society has no easy answers. Creating a human being through cloning isn't like traditional reproduction, where the child has its own unique combination of genetics. A clone would be an exact copy of someone else, an identical twin-born years or even decades later. The clone wouldn't have its own identity, and that raises serious questions about freedom and human rights. Would this clone be entitled to the same treatment as the original, or would it be considered something different altogether? On top of the ethical concerns, cloning humans also faces practical problems. First, even though scientists can clone human embryos, it's not a process that has any real-world applications right now. Cloning an entire person would be incredibly complicated. And for what purpose? If you cloned yourself, the clone would start out as a baby. Even though it would eventually grow into a person who looks exactly like you, it wouldn't have your memories, your thoughts, or your personality. It would be like raising a completely new person, just one that shares your DNA. The clone would need to learn everything from scratch, just like any other child. So even though the clone would look like you, it wouldn't be you. Over the years, there have been claims that someone, somewhere, has successfully cloned a human being, but none of these claims have ever been proven. If human clones do exist, they've been kept out of the public eye. But beyond the mystery and fascination, cloning humans for practical purposes, such as for labor or to replace lost loved ones, is not just ethically questionable, it's also impractical. Imagine trying to clone someone to create a perfect worker. Sure, they might look the part, but they wouldn't have any skills or experience. A clone would be a physical copy, but it wouldn't have the knowledge or abilities that make a person useful in the workforce. Raising and educating a clone would take years, just like raising a child. Some people have even suggested that human cloning could be a way to boost labor efficiency, but this idea quickly breaks down when you consider the time and effort it would take to train and educate clones. Clones wouldn't just pop out of the lab ready to work. They'd have to go through the same learning process as everyone else. It would take years for a clone to gain any meaningful skills, making this approach a very impractical way to solve labor shortages. In fact, instead of clones, advanced robots or remote-controlled machines might be a much more effective way to improve labor efficiency. Robots don't need to sleep, eat, or learn. They can be programmed to do specific tasks without all the ethical baggage that comes with creating and raising human clones. But cloning isn't all about science fiction and futuristic workers. One of the most promising areas of cloning technology is in the field of medicine. Scientists believe that cloning could be used to create organs for people who need transplants. Imagine if, instead of waiting for a donor, you could have a heart, liver, or kidney cloned from your own DNA. The organ would be a perfect match for your body, eliminating the risk of rejection, which is one of the biggest problems in organ transplants today. This kind of cloning wouldn't involve creating a whole new person. It would focus on cloning individual organs, which dodges many of the ethical issues associated with full human cloning. In fact, this could save millions of lives by solving the organ donor shortage. Every day, people die while waiting for an organ transplant, and cloned organs might be the key to solving this life and death problem. Cloning technology could push the boundaries of medicine even further. Some scientists are exploring the possibility of brain transplants into cloned bodies. This idea is still in the field of science fiction, but imagine if one day you could transfer your brain into a cloned version of your body. The cloned body would be younger and healthier, allowing you to live longer, essentially giving you a second life. But just like with cloning full humans, this idea raises huge ethical questions. If you transferred your brain into a new, cloned body, who would you be? Would you still be the same person? Or would you be something different? And could society even accept such a revolutionary idea? Even if these possibilities seem far off, one thing that stands in the way of human cloning advancements is the legal restrictions that many countries have put in place. In a lot of places, cloning humans is illegal, and even research into cloning is heavily restricted. These laws are meant to prevent abuse and protect people from the potential dangers of cloning technology. But they also slow down scientific progress. If cloning research were allowed to move forward without so many restrictions, scientists might discover more ways cloning could be used to benefit humanity. However, easing these laws would also require us to confront the ethical issues that come with cloning. Are we ready to tackle the big questions about identity, humanity, and the value of life? Cloning technology is full of promise, but it's also full of problems we don't yet know how to solve. While human cloning remains an exciting idea, it's weighed down by ethical concerns, practical limitations, and legal barriers. For now, the idea of cloning yourself is still far from reality, and the world isn't ready to deal with the consequences of creating full human clones. However, cloning is already changing the world of medicine, and the future of cloning organs could save countless lives. It's fascinating to think about what might be possible if we continue to develop this technology. Could cloned organs become standard in hospitals? Will brain transplants into cloned bodies ever become a reality? Only time will tell. As we stand on the edge of what cloning technology could achieve, one thing is certain: the future holds endless possibilities. Whether it's solving the organ donor crisis or revolutionizing medicine in ways we can't yet imagine, cloning has the potential to change the way we think about life, death, and identity. But until we're ready to answer the big questions about cloning humans, the idea of waking up next to a perfect replica of yourself remains more of a daydream than a real possibility. And yet, the science is advancing, and the dream of cloning yourself might one day be more than just science fiction. It could be a reality. If you could clone yourself, would you? And more importantly, what would that clone mean for you and for the world? The answers may not be clear yet, but the future of cloning is sure to be full of surprises.